All right. We're taking all the best old school wisdom and blending it with the top new school methods to bring you the optimal coaching strategies. This is the 80-20 Baseball Podcast with Coach Bo.
Welcome to this week's episode, 80-20 Baseball Coaches, 80-20 Baseball Community. Pumped up to be here. Episode 198, closing in on 200. We're going to be over that Mendoza line really soon, throwing that out there for my old school baseball peeps. It's great to have all of you here. This week's episode is packed. We have a pregame tip that I'm going to share with you. We're going to dive into the top 5 coaching tweets / coaching messages of the month. And spoiler alert, I couldn't narrow it down to the top 5. I think this is the second month in a row I've done a top 7 coaching tweets of the month. And if this happens one more time, we're changing this segment that we do once a month to the top 7. So we will get into those 2 key areas. Last week, talked about us coaches using the same terminologies. And right after that episode went live or was published for all of you great listeners, I finished that Joe Maddon book, which I was discussing. And the last chapter, or it was the second to last chapter, started talking about fundamentals. And the author, Tom Verducci, by the way, it's a great book. Highly recommend youth coaches read that. Coaches of all levels. I don't like to recommend books too lightly. I think it's a great book for baseball coaches, of course, because it talks a lot about baseball, but it fits right in. And Joe Maddon, Coach Maddon, his message, his goals as a manager, as a coach, align perfectly with the 80-20 blueprint, the 80-20 plan. So the book towards the end started talking about fundamentals. The author was discussing some fundamentals and then brought in some quotes about fundamentals. And they weren't talking about fundamentals as I think of fundamentals, as most coaches I've been around and I've learned from think of fundamentals. So it was interesting. We talked about using the same terminology in last week's episode as coaches with our coaching staff, with ourselves. So we continue to keep a consistent message in terms of at least terminology and what we're calling things. That doesn't mean, again, that we can't change our coaching strategies. It doesn't mean that we can't change our priorities as coaches. We should be able to pivot and adjust as we learn and get better. Our drills should surely get better every time you use them, or at least every other time you use them. But the terminology, the words we use to describe things like hitting plan versus hitting approach, are essentially the same thing, but pick one and run with it. Call it a drag bunt or call it a late show bunt, but don't go back and forth. It seems like a little thing, but I think it's a big thing, quickening that learning curve up for our players. So Joe Maddon, the manager that was the Rays manager, the Cubs manager, and recently the Angels manager, also said that 97% of team meetings are a waste of time. For many of you, that sounds like a big number. Maybe it is a number he just off the cuff said. I'm sure it's not founded in a study that he conducted, but it is fair to say that team meetings, by and large, that I've seen over the years with many different coaches in many different sports, they're not moving the needle. They're not helping the team culture. They're not getting the team closer to winning more games. They're not getting the players closer to perfecting or at least improving their skills. Also in that book, and again, I'm recommending it. I think it's a really good book. And a couple of things that I didn't hit on last week that I thought were interesting from that book. And again, this book is from the eyes of a coach who loves baseball, loves his players. That's a good lens to learn from as youth baseball coaches. One of the things that Coach Maddon said is see it with first-time eyes. It's kind of that beginner's mind that Zen is so popular for, or I should say it is so popular in the Zen world, the message of beginner's mind. He said, see it with first-time eyes. What does he mean by that? I think in an overarching way, he's saying, look to improve things. Don't just say this is how we always did it. In fact, he was very bold in one section of the book. He talked about his biggest pet peeve, the thing that gets him the most upset, the thing that chaps his hide the most, is when somebody tells him the reason they're doing something is because that's the way they've always done it. And I can't tell you how many times I've heard this, or I heard this over the years, playing baseball and coaching baseball, even at the high levels. I heard this in college, high-level college baseball. I remember asking the hitting coach why batting practice is always being thrown, the pitches are always being thrown, one, at about 60% of the velocity that the hitters are going to turn around and see in the game in an hour and a half, and also why they never mixed up pitches. They never threw off timing in batting practice. Batting practice coaches are just literally trying to throw it down the middle at 60 miles an hour. And in college baseball at the time, the average fastball was probably upper 80s, 90. And every pitcher was definitely throwing more than one pitch and typically at least a second quality pitch at that level. And I remember asking the hitting coach, hey, why is it like that? Why does it not at all mimic the game that's coming up? The thing that we're getting prepared for, the thing that the hitters are getting prepared for. And the answer was, well, that's just how it's always been done. That's how we've always done it. It's fascinating that somebody could say that and not almost immediately question their own reason. But Coach Maddon said that's the number one thing he doesn't want to hear. So when you go out there as coaches, and I think the reason I've been able to progress my coaching plan, process, methods really fast over a long period of time is because I'm always going in and going, how can it be done better? Another thing Coach Maddon said is no regurgitation. We are all originals. In fact, many of these things he put on t-shirts. He's really well known for putting things on t-shirts. Hey, there's a great idea, youth coaches. You got a slogan for the team? You got a slogan that you really want to buy into as a team? Get some t-shirts made up with that slogan, with that phrase. Of course, it's going to cost money, but maybe you can have somebody donate it. Maybe they slap on a little sponsor logo somewhere on it. Coach Maddon was big on putting meaningful messages, quotes, small messages, short, concise quotes on t-shirts that everybody on the team would wear. One quote that he loved was, attitude is a decision. And he got that from the late, great Dr. Ken Revisa, who I've mentioned on this podcast. I was very fortunate to study under for about as much as, any one athlete. I'm sure there was some athletes that maybe spent some more time with him, but I spent not just all 4 years of college, but he came to our high school and coached us up. He's considered the godfather of the mental game of baseball. And my parents bought me his book. My mom went to Cal State Fullerton where he was a professor. And my mom and dad bought me his book when it first came out, the original edition, almost 30 years ago. And one of his main quotes was, attitude is a decision. So that would be a good message to put on a shirt. How about hustle is a decision, or only option, full speed? Get creative. Have the team vote on it. Maybe have players come up with an idea for a slogan for the shirt. Tell them the parameters. Have them each come up with their own idea or ideas. I wouldn't have it be corny. It can have a little lightness to it or a little subtle humor, but I think it should be meaningful. So I wanted to dive into that book a little more as I finished it up. And I want to hit on something. They did talk about fundamentals in the book towards the end, like I mentioned earlier. And when I think of fundamentals, I don't think of how the book was describing it. The book was describing it. It wasn't Coach Maddon describing it. It was the author, and the fundamentals of baseball were being described as like a specific part of a skill, almost like a part of the swing or the pitching delivery, like a component of something. When I think of fundamentals, I think of whole movements and actions, throwing the baseball accurately, not on the run, not some crazy shuffle or off balance throw. Normal, balanced, accurate throws. Catching throws cleanly. That would be the fundamental. The next thing I would say, the next step that wouldn't necessarily be a fundamental would be able to leap up for a ball, stretch out to the sides for a ball, scoop bad throws. Now that starts getting past the fundamentals. The fundamentals to me are whole actions, whole movements, but the things you got to start with first. Until a player can take a step and throw the ball, hit the other player in the chest from an average distance in a game, it's probably not a great idea to start introducing a lot of throwing on the run. I'm not saying you can't. I don't think they have to perfect all the fundamentals to then add some fun in, incorporate some different stuff and difficulty. But I would definitely have them fielding ground balls within their range before I would have them trying to master diving for ground balls. Again, I think it's okay to dive for ground balls even when they're still trying to figure out how to consistently field ground balls that are hit right to them or right to them. But I wouldn't get caught up in some of those next level things. Pitching, throwing the fastball for strikes. Throw the fastball for strikes. Notice I didn't even say hit the glove. Throw it in the strike zone. Notice I didn't say 3 different pitches for strikes. Throw the fastball for strikes. That's the fundamentals. Then build from there. So these are how I see fundamentals. And I think I wanted to clarify this because we talked about using similar terminology, if not the exact same terminology, when coaching up these key parts. I thought, wow, I'm listening to this book. And what I think of fundamentals, what I've always been coached to think of fundamentals, what I think is by and large, the way most coaches have always thought of fundamentals, the fundamentals weren't being described as that. It was almost fundamentals were discussing or describing something different. Even though there was similarity to it, it was different. It was clearly a different thing. And I'm thinking, oh, wow, just got done talking about this on the podcast. And so I thought, well, I got to bring up this as an example, the fundamentals. This is something I've heard about a lot over the years, but I've probably never had anybody explain it. What are the fundamentals deep down to me? I've heard parts of here's the fundamental here, the fundamentals. I've heard examples given over the years. I've definitely heard the word fundamentals. We got to do the fundamentals. Then I've heard examples, and I'm sharing some of those that I learned years ago here. And I think they are truly the fundamentals. Optimizing the hitting plan. I think that's fundamental. Swinging at the right pitches. To me, that's the fundamentals, just swinging at the right pitches. And then from there, hitting the ball off the wall every time is like next level. But swinging at the right pitches. Then I would say hitting line drives or hitting the ball hard. The fundamentals of hitting. Drag bunting. That's a good fundamental. Then work on the push bunt. Then work on walk the dog, which is kind of a lefty bringing it down the line with them towards first base. It's called walking the dog or a safety squeeze or squeeze bunts and things like that. Just get the drag bunt. That's the best bunt out there. Love that bunt. In fact, I've told you before, when I coach a team, I tell my hitters, if that third baseman's deep, it's automatic drag bunt. Automatic drag bunt. The only time I might pull that off is if the pitcher's been consistently wild. Other than that, drag bunt, automatic in that situation, but that's a fundamental. Catcher's blocking the ball. Then you can work on hopping up and throwing out the runner at second. Blocking the ball. Catching the pitches cleanly, and then those in the dirt block. Basically receiving. Then you can work on catch and throw, release time, pop times, things like that. But that's not the fundamentals. Receiving the ball, you could even kind of dive into some framing, and then blocking, keeping the ball in front of you. Catching fly balls, catching relatively routine fly balls, not leaping over the fence, robbing home runs. That's not fundamentals. Fundamentals to me is catching fly balls. So running through that list of fundamentals, catching throws cleanly, a one-step throw or a subtle shuffle throw on a line, hitting your teammate in the chest in a good area, or if you're throwing it to a base, maybe waist high or knee high, but accurate. And that would be if you're throwing it to a base where there's a tag play, but accurate throws. So catching throws cleanly, catching regular throws cleanly, making regular throws, fielding your typical routine ground balls, catching fly balls at a relatively routine or a little outside the routine, but nothing that they're diving for, hopping fences for, laying out, throwing the fastball for strikes, throwing the fastball for a strike, throwing it in the strike zone, high, low, in, out, just fastball for strikes, especially at the youth baseball level. Drag bunting, optimize the hitting plan. The fundamentals with base running get a little murky. The big thing that I teach for running the bases on the fundamental level to just new base runners, young base runners, is the message of calculated aggression. So I want them to be aggressive, but not foolish. And really the only way to coach that up is to let them just do it. You could say getting a good jump. There's a lot of nuances to running the bases, a ton. So I don't think there's one clear-cut fundamental other than hustle. Run the bases hard. Like I said, run the bases aggressive, but not foolish. Calculated aggression. Catchers catching the pitch and blocking those pitches in the dirt. Anything that they can reach, they catch, and they block anything that they can block. And last but not least, the mental fundamental, knowing how to get involved in the play when on defense, even without the ball, even though they don't have the ball. So players knowing how to get involved, learning how to get involved, backing up bases, some of those fundamentals. How to get involved. Basically, how to play the game on some of those basic levels of, I got to cover this base, I got to be here, the play's here. If I don't get the ball, I'm going to back up over here. Just knowing where to go on each play. And with reference to, or with regard to the fundamentals in this area, knowing how to get involved in the routine plays. Like I saw a video just an hour ago, a AA minor leaguer not sliding into second when there was a force out because it was going to be a close play and the base runner ran through second. So the reason he didn't slide is because he knew he could go faster standing up. He knew he could go faster if he didn't slide, so he ran through the bag, made a left turn, and went to third base. That little difference between the traditional slide in that situation and him running through the base prevented the defense from turning a double play. Because without his out, now they couldn't turn a double play. Well, when the play started, the bases were loaded. So now that runner from third had already scored. There was one out. If they turned that double play, inning over, no runs score. I've never seen that before. It was awesome. Now, I'm sharing that because that is something I wouldn't even bother to teach. Wouldn't even bother to teach that until like professional baseball. That is so far from fundamental base running. So I just want to show you the extreme example. How about just teaching the kids to be aggressive out there, always looking to get an extra base? Just don't be foolish. That really comes through learning. Now, the same thing could be said about the fundamentals of knowing how to get involved in the play, in the action, even without the ball or with the ball. All right, we're going to wrap up that part there. Wanted to hit on that just to clarify fundamentals. Now, before we jump into the top 7 coaching tweets of the month, got a pregame tip that will help your team be better prepared when the game starts. So we're only going to give our players or our team one thing to focus on for each aspect of the game. So one thing to focus on for each aspect of the game: hitting, base running, defense, pitching, and catching. Now, here's the thing. There's more to this. I highly recommend, if you are going to give pregame pointers or pregame tips or pregame messages about something that you want the players to work on or focus on in the game, the message should be concise, clear. It should not be a new message. It should be a message that has been discussed in a practice or multiple practices. Shouldn't be something brand new to the player, not right before the game. And ideally, you speak to individual players about something that they can focus on. And it's more important that they focus on that than maybe for the rest of the team, or maybe you have a handful of players that you talk to about certain things, especially the catchers. You're not going to share out like the main thing you want your catchers to work on with your outfielders or with players that aren't catching. I don't think we should fill their minds with things that don't relate to them or aren't relative to them necessarily right before a game. It's okay during practice because they very well may end up playing that position down the road. So if they hear it, that's good, but not right before the game. The message before the game needs to be ultra concise, ultra clear, and it needs to be hyper targeted, in my opinion. Or if you give it to the whole team and you think the whole team could get better at it, great. Then just give it to the whole team. You might say, hey, hitters, today at the plate, we're just focusing on swinging at the right pitches. Don't say we're focused on hitting line drives, we're focused on bunts, we're focused on this, that, or the other. We're focused on swinging at the right pitch each time. Now, after that, I wouldn't go up to individual players and then give them another tip or two or goal for the game when it comes to hitting. You could talk to them about another aspect of the game, but I wouldn't go up and double down in that specific area that you already addressed. So one thing per area, and honestly, I wouldn't go more than 2 things per player that you want them to work on. Again, there's a lot of different components and aspects of the game of baseball: base running, hitting, catching, pitching, defense, infield. First base is almost a different type of spot in the infield. Outfield, less is more, less is more. Like Joe Maddon says, do simple better, do simple better. So that's a great way to approach your pre-game messaging. Now, you can talk to the players about how they're doing. You can have a little fun, some humor, get them laughing, keep it light. But when it comes to giving a specific message or goal or thing to focus on in the game, I wouldn't give more than 2 per player. Again, those could vary depending on if you don't just spread it across the team and it's a team-wide focus. If it's individual, no more than 2 per player and no more than 1 in any specific area. Hitters can focus on one thing, and then when they go to defense, they can then focus on something else. It's much easier than giving them 2 or 3 goals when they're in the batter's box. Now, speaking of calculated aggressive base running or calculated aggression on the base path, Mookie Betts. You know, I'm not going to get deep on Mookie Betts here, but he's been taking the ball deep. 36 home runs. He's not even that big a guy. He has created, or he has added more wins to his team than anybody in the National League, I believe, at this time. His on-base plus slugging is number 1 in the major leagues, I believe, at this time. Fun player to watch, Mookie Betts. And a good example to use, especially if he wins another MVP award, a good example to use for your players think they're too good to go play another position, right? They think that, hey, I'm too good to play that position, or, hey, that's not my position, or, hey, I want to learn just this position. Well, Mookie Betts has been playing second base. He played a little shortstop. Of course, he plays right field. I bet he could pound the strike zone if he pitched. He's just trying to help his team win. Now, Mookie Betts is a really good right fielder. He has won 6 gold gloves as a right fielder. 6 gold gloves. And he doesn't hesitate to go play second base for his team. And it's not like the right fielder that's taking his spot is better than he is. Jason Hayward is not a shabby right fielder, but he's not Mookie Betts. But he knows that if he goes to second and Jason Hayward can play right field, that elevates the team's defense overall. He's a team player. So you could use this as an example. Take a little clip of him playing second. They're on YouTube. You can find it. Say, hey, look, you know who that is? Oh, yeah, coach, that's Mookie Betts. If they don't know, tell them that's Mookie Betts. They should watch some baseball. So, yeah, Mookie Betts. You know, he's one of the best right fielders in all the game. He's got 6 gold gloves, meaning he's one of the best outfielders in the whole world. He's been the MVP. He's won the World Series. You know what? When the coach said, hey, you play second, he said, okay. And he went to second because he knew it would help his team. In fact, 12 starts at shortstop, 98 innings. That's quite a bit. 336 innings at second base, 43 starts at second base, 626 innings in right field. So he's played his regular position for 627 innings. He's played 434 innings in the infield. It's about 40% of his time has been an infielder, 60% in the outfield. And he goes hard. He plays hard. He takes it seriously. I think it's good to use examples because everybody's below Mookie Betts, or not everybody. Of course, when Ohtani's on doing his thing and Trout and, these players like Judge, of course, they're players, and Acuna and the other great players out there. But besides those players, everybody else in the world is below him, especially youth players, so they can say, hey, look, the greatest players in the world do X, Y, and Z. You think you can do it as a 10-year-old on your local Little League team? I think so. If the greats can do it, then us Little Leaguers can do it. Now, don't take that the wrong way. I'm not saying we should do everything they should do at that level. Definitely not. That's why I started this podcast. I thought there was a lot of that messaging, not enough to youth baseball. But what I'm saying is it's a good way to sell what you're trying to get the players to buy into, especially if you can sell it with a star player or a player that they know. All right, top 5, check that. Top 7 coaching tweets of the month. These are good. So, number 1, Jamie Bechler, at Coach Bechler, Becchler, posted a quote from Jocko Willink. And he said, quote, do the right thing for the right reasons and you will win in the end, end quote. Man, Jocko absolutely gets leadership. He gets coaching. He gets teaching. He gets it. And you know what? The reason he gets it is because he has so much experience in it and in the trenches, literally, and he had to get it. Jocko Willink, ex-Navy SEAL, you had to get it right. You have to get it right. There is no second chance if you mess up in a lot of situations. They have to get it right. There's no theory. There's no hypothesis. It's either does it work or does it not. So I think that's a great place to start when it comes to leadership and being a coach. Who's going to be the most accurate with their coaching strategies or their tips on how to be a better leader? Probably the person or people that are considered not only the most elite teams in the world, but can't get it wrong. They literally cannot get it wrong. It's life and death. So he says, quote, do the right thing for the right reasons and you will win in the end, end quote. Youth coaches, take that motto out there. Do the right thing for the right reasons and you will win in the end. And your players will win, not just on the scoreboard. They're going to win as people and society will win. Everybody's going to win. They're going to remember you and respect you forever as a coach because you did the right thing for the right reasons. Number 2, this is by Save Your Sons, at Save Your Sons. Here's the tweet or the post. Just a reminder that 75% of the time you'll ever get to spend with your kids is over by the time they turn 12. And 90% of your time with them is gone by the time they're 18. Slow down, be present, and enjoy these short, sweet years. They'll soon be over. End post. I don't know. I tried to verify those numbers. Now, while they might not be precise, they can't be that far off. These numbers make sense. So remember, when we're tired, maybe not in a good mood, stressed out, feel like we have to get that project done or this thing or that done, or we feel like we need to go play some extra golf or whatnot. I'm not here to judge, but I'm just saying this. The listeners of this podcast are here because you align the purpose, the plan to get our players better, get their skills better, but more importantly, create and build better teams, winning cultures, better human beings, better experiences, more fun, while also getting their skills better. But we always keep our priorities in line. So those of you that are here, and I've been here a long time, going on 4 years, going on 200 episodes, you know those numbers are pretty accurate. They got to be fairly accurate. 90% of the time with our kids is done and over with by the time they're 18. 75% of the time we'll ever spend with our kids is over by the time they're 12. Now, even if that number's 60% or even 50, I think it's probably fairly accurate. But even if it's lower, that's a real eye-opener, I think. And it really helps prioritize or helps us prioritize what's important and also what's important right now. Now, I got a lot of things I want to do. So I don't really have a bucket list. I call it an empty nest list of all the things that come to mind or I get invited to do. And I say yes from time to time. In fact, I'm going down to see all my grade school buddies this weekend. All my grade school buddies, I guess I should say, as you hear this, I'll be coming back or I'll have just gotten back to Boise. But I go down to SoCal and I see all my grade school buddies. So I like to go and do things that as adults that we would like to do. But here's the thing. If we improve the quality of the time that we spend with them, if we're in a better mood around them during that time that we spend with them before they're 12, before they're 18, if we're present more consistently when we spend time with them before they're 12, before they're 18, before they spread their wings and fly out away from the nest, I think that's going to buy us more time when they are older. So if that 90% of your time with them before they leave the nest is high quality, you give them your time, your love, your support. I think that 10% that's left is going to be a lot of time. Remember, it's a percentage. It's not a total amount of time, right? So the more time you spend with them before they're 12 and before they're 18, if we're following the statistics here, the percentage, then the time after will grow. And I think we all know that's true, except for some of those rare and kind of random circumstances and things like that. So being a coach, it's a win-win. You're helping the team get better. You're helping the kids, your community in your area get better, not just at baseball, but as people. They're having fun, but you get to spend more time with your own kid being the coach. That's why my dad did it. All right, next tweet. This is from Pitching Coach U. This one's a crazy stat. Roy Halladay, the late, great Roy Halladay, holds the single season record for the worst ERA in MLB history. Yeah, that's true. It was like 10 point something, over 10 for a qualifying ERA. So he had to pitch a certain amount of innings. I mean, there's worse ERAs every year than that, but over 10 ERA with a substantial amount of innings. So Roy Halladay holds the single season record for the worst ERA in MLB history. He's also a Hall of Famer. So this quote comes from Pitching Coach U. It says, Roy Halladay holds the single season record for the worst ERA in MLB history. He's also a first ballot Hall of Famer. What you did yesterday doesn't determine what you can become today. Keep going. This is a great message for your pitchers. This is a great message for your players. There's a Hall of Fame pitcher that has the single worst season under his belt of pitching in MLB history. And you don't have to get into the deal of qualifying innings and certain amount and this, that, and the other. But you can say, hey, his ERA was over 10. And then he went on to become a first ballot Hall of Famer. So you have a couple bad games. You have a bad year. You're not doing very well as a 7, 8, 9-year-old. Hey, Roy Halladay went from the worst to first. Atlanta Braves style, Tampa Bay Devil Rays style. I keep saying Devil Rays. I apologize. I think I said Devil Rays last week. I say Devil Rays. I'm sorry, Rays. All right. I just call them as I know it. I grew up, knowing. In fact, I was drafted by the Tampa Bay Devil Rays. So it's hard for me. It's funny because the two teams that drafted me, both have changed their names. Like I've joked before, when I'm older, I'm a grandpa, I'm going to tell my grandkids, or they might ask, hey, you play baseball? Heard you play baseball? Yeah. Hey, you ever played professional? I said, I played some minor league ball, but I got drafted twice. And by who? By who, Grandpa? I'm going to tell them the names. They're going to be like, come on, Grandpa, you making that up. You didn't get drafted. Those teams don't exist. But nevertheless, I thought that was a great message for players that are struggling. Here's a good one. This is by @MegRem Softball, MEGREM Softball. It's a lot easier to practice full speed and slow it down in a game if you need to. What we can't do is practice half speed and expect to go game speed come game time. Practice how you want to play. We hear that cliche all the time, practice how you want to play. In fact, I would step it up a little bit if you can in every drill or in most drills, at least a fraction or a percentage of the drill. Make it harder or faster than the game. Challenge your players. We're going to talk about this in next week's episode a little more. We're going to dive into some of this. I can go years, not just months, but years without seeing a practice that was consistently across the board throughout the practice at the speed of the upcoming games or the games for that level. It's a lot easier to practice full speed and slow it down in the game if you need to. Great message. Next one. This guy was on our podcast, Coach Tommy Hansen. His tweet says, I don't really see the point of adding extra conditioning at the end of practice, especially a hard practice. If you want the most effective conditioning, it should be done during practice. Make drills faster paced, etc. Couldn't agree more. It's a win-win. You make your drills faster paced. Of course, you want to make sure you keep the safety component in there. Fast paced drills, more quality reps, as long as they're authentic and actually things that are going to be done in the game, actions that are actually taking place in the upcoming game. Making drills faster paced makes teams better prepared for the game and in better shape. They're at better fitness levels inherently. You do a faster paced practice, your players will have better fitness. They'll be in better shape. Now in baseball, the benefits of that are definitely not like basketball and other sports, but it never hurts to be in good shape as an athlete or as a person. So make drills faster. Like Tommy Hansen said, don't just rely on extra conditioning. Don't just add extra conditioning. Great quote by Coach Tommy Hansen. We'll have to get him back on this podcast. He had another couple topics that I wanted to talk about with him. I really like where he's coming from. All right, last two. I'll tell you what, the last one might be the best. This might be my number one tweet of the month. But before we get there, here we go. This one is from theleadershipplaybook.com. Coach Betchler again, theleadershipplaybook.com. Quote, a coach will impact more people in 1 year than the average person will in an entire lifetime. That quote's from Billy Graham, shared by Coach Betchler. So, quote, a coach will impact, us as coaches will impact more people, more kids in 1 year than the average person will in an entire lifetime. Of course, average. Teachers with a lot of kids coming through their doors and other positions in the community might impact more kids in 1 year, but the average person will impact fewer kids or fewer people in their lifetime than we as coaches will impact in a year. I don't know if they've done studies on that, but I think the message overall is true. We're going to impact a lot of people, kids that are going to grow up and be the leaders of our society a lot more than the average person. And definitely if you do it for 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years. All right. Top quote from the top tweet of the month. This is from @TheWinningDiff1. The winning difference @TheWinningDiff, DIF1. Now this is coming from a coach, looks like a football coach, being quoted on a video here. It looks like the last name Zimmerman. So Coach Zimmerman, I want to give credit where it's due here. So this is a tweet, like I said, The Winning Difference tweeted this. It looks like Coach Zimmerman, a football coach, looks like a high school football coach said this. Quote, we are cheating our kids in the biggest way if we are just teaching the sport. 7.6% will play beyond high school, but 100% will be adults. What kind of adults do we want to live around? What are we doing to get them ready to compete in life? Wow. When I read that, it was like instantaneously going, wow, that message is gold. I'm going to read it one more time. I'd love to read it 10 more times, but you can always hit the back button on your podcast app. We are cheating our kids in the biggest way if we are just teaching the sport. 7.6 will play beyond high school, but 100% will be adults. What kind of adults do we want to live around? What are we doing to get them ready to compete in life? End quote. That's a message right there. Love it. Hopefully a lot of you are sitting there shaking your head. Yes, that's what it's about right there. So I like this tweets of the month because there's so much great wisdom out there. I curate it. I go through. I don't like Twitter or social media. I don't mind Twitter. I just don't like social media that much, but I go on there and I try to go through about 100 posts every other day. So you figure the math, it's a lot of posts. I try to go through and I try to keep my followers, kind of tight where I know it's be some good stuff in my feed. But I like to go through there and get these. And if I need to kind of redirect the message or take the message and try to steer it to youth baseball or towards youth baseball so all of us can use it. It's not just some tweet from some coach that we can't use, but it's something that we can use to be better. All right, next week, episode 199, we are going to learn what the best coaches do at their practice. We're going to learn something that the best do at their practice, not just coaches, but players do at their practice, and what they do more specifically with their practice environment that most coaches, especially youth coaches, never implement. We're going to learn what the best players, teams, coaches do to their practice environment that most youth coaches never implement. Huge competitive advantages sitting there. And it's a lot more fun for players in the long run. Also, I booked an interview with a coach that has written youth baseball coaching articles, youth coaching articles, has 3 books on the topic, and I'm excited. I think this one's going to fit perfectly. Reached out, wanted to be on the podcast. I did my homework, some digging, love the message. It fits perfectly with the 80-20 baseball blueprint, game plan, mission, purpose. So looking forward to that. Probably do that interview in the next 2 or 3 weeks. In the meantime, head over to the 80-20 baseball website, drill design guide, a dozen videos, articles. You put those with the podcast, you can just really elevate your coaching game. The best thing you can do to support the podcast, there's no advertisements on here. There's no marketing. I don't even put plugs in. Well, at least nothing I'm getting paid for. The best thing you can do to support the podcast is share it out, give it a review, a rating. And I'm getting a lot of great emails. Positive emails, questions, coaches sharing me their success stories. Hey, keep sending me those. Love hearing from all of you. Share the podcast. And until next week, let's take care of ourselves. Let's take care of the fundamentals in our life. First, let's take care of those fundamentals so we can take care of our family, take care of our close friends, and take this out there, this information, this knowledge, this wisdom that's been shared out here, not just from me, but from the whole coaching community, and take it out there to the field. Thank you all for being coaches. And until next week, adios.
This has been the 80-20 Baseball Masterclass. Take it to the field.